Next, we have House Bill 434 by Leader Lamberth. Leader Lamberth, you are recognized. Properly motioned and second.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And there is a technical change on the bill. It's there's an amendment that's coded 003874.
Any questions on Amendment 3874? Hearing none, all those who have put in 3874 onto House Bill 434 say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment's on. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. So this bill came to me from Nikki Goeser. And Nikki used to work down here at the legislature. She was a legislative assistant for Curtis Halford, Representative Halford. And before she worked at the legislature, her husband was murdered right in front of her. They were doing a karaoke deal down on 2nd Avenue, and a man who was stalking her literally came up and shot her husband dead right in front of her. That man was convicted, and he went off to prison. Now, while he was in prison, you would think that a victim of violent crime of that point would be safe from that individual, that they would never have to think about that they would be able to deal with their grief and go about their life unmolested and not have to worry about it. But unbeknownst to Ms. Goeser, this individual who was convicted of murdering her husband was sending letters to her. The only address he had, thank goodness, was the address of her attorney. Years go by, and she did not know that those letters were coming to her. And these are bizarre letters. I did not bring examples, but these are letters no victim should receive, and very kind of all over the place, but very concerning. She found out about those letters a few months ago and was very, very, very disturbed. And one of the other things, when she reached out to me, and she knows that I've worked on several bills like this in years past to protect victims, just as Judge Carter and Chairman Littleton and others have worked on, and Representative Stewart, to try to keep victims of violent crime safe. She reached out to me and said, what can I do to keep this person from being able to contact with me? So we immediately started looking at orders of protection because, as Judge Carter knows, there was nothing in the original judgment that sent this man to prison that had a no contact. And that kind of makes sense because a district attorney, that person's attorney, the judge, would assume that wouldn't be necessary. This person went to prison. They got the maximum penalty that you could get for that. So you would think no additional orders would be necessary. But the letters kept coming. And so an order of protection was really the only thing that we could think of. And as, again, the judge knows, those are really more for more immediate actions that have occurred, and they're to be renewed yearly. That's kind of how an order of protection works. Someone goes down, gets an ex parte order of protection, it's served on the individual, they have a hearing, and it's for something that probably has happened pretty recently. There's never a time in Ms. Goeser's life or anybody else's life that's in her circumstance where she should ever hear from this person again. It doesn't matter if it's next year, if it's 20 years from now. She should never hear from this person. So that's what this bill does. It allows for an order of protection to be granted by a judge. Doesn't have to be granted. The judge can hear the facts of the case, and there is a list of offenses that this would include. It is the more serious felonies that we limited it to that, such as aggravated assault, vehicular assault, second-degree murder, first-degree murder, virtually every homicide down through there, aggravated sexual battery, rape, aggravated rape. Those type of crimes, the victim or victim's family member should be able to at least petition to a judge to be left alone forever. That's what this bill does. They would not have to renew that order of protection. It would be for a lifetime. It does allow for up to a year to serve an order of protection. That is a bit of a separate part of this bill, but it affects these order protections and everything else. There was an issue that came up in my district where technically right now you only have 15 days. This would allow for a year for the ex parte to be filed, but again, I want to be very clear on this. Law enforcement should file that as soon as possible. There are some folks that try to avoid that service, and under current law, if they were to do so for more than 15 days, technically speaking, the victim would have to start over again. So there is a secondary aspect of this bill that deals with the service of an order of protection. But again, that is to provide for, again, the protection of the victim to make sure someone's not avoiding process. That's what the bill does. I stand ready for questions.
Thank you for bringing this bill. I remember Nikki really well, and we've kind of done a little bit of emailing back and forth and texting, but no one should have to relive this the rest of their lives. It takes them forever to get over it anyway, but in between all of that, they should not have to be tortured this way. So thank you for bringing this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Brickham, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just again, more of a curiosity question, but if they're a convicted felon in jail, what's going to stop them from doing this? Because what's the punishment?
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you for that question. It is a really good question. So, if someone is subject to an order of protection, and if they violate that order of protection, they're subject to potential additional misdemeanor penalties, not felony, but misdemeanor penalties. If you are convicted of a misdemeanor and you are serving a felony sentence, and it gets run consecutive to or on top of that felony sentence, it messes up all of your good time. It ensures that you will wind up spending more time in prison because you have a misdemeanor sentence out there that's waiting on you for when you are released on the felony sentence. And it has a pretty drastic effect on when you're up for parole, on when you would be eligible for release, having that misdemeanor sentence consecutive to. Now, a judge wouldn't have to run it consecutive to, but I would hope any judge that would find somebody in violation of this order of protection while in prison would absolutely tack time onto that sentence consecutive to whatever they were already serving. But that's the penalty. Now, obviously, if you have somebody that's serving a life sentence, there's not a whole lot we can do besides try to get TDOC to check their mail and insist. I say all the time, an order of protection is just a piece of paper, but it does show these victims that all of us have their back and that the entire court system has their back. So it is hopefully that extra layer of protection that would make sure that person knows you can't contact this other person.
Thank you. Thank you.
Judge Carter, you recognize?
Thank you. The leader dealt with it because this is going to come up at every hearing, because remember, this is a misdemeanor committed while in prison. And so when you try to get out or try and get an early release date, this would really mess you up. Secondly, it can be a grounds to move people. I had no idea that your location of where you serve your time is so critical. I used to have people call me and say, look, I'm 30 miles from my family. They come to see me every weekend. I got in a fight with a guy and he ended up dead. Now they've sentenced me. They're transferring me to Fort Pillow from Pikeville State Prison. I'm going to be 450 miles from my family. This is crazy. And so that's a very substantial penalty imposed. And so remember, this is the commission of a new crime in jail, and that really brings in a whole new set of disciplines. And so it's a lot more than just misdemeanor punishment. Thank you, Mr. Leader. We should have done this years ago.
Are there any other questions? Oh, you're recognized.
Leaders, I ended up drafting a bill somewhat similar to this one, and because of this bill specifically, I stopped mine. And so I don't know Nikki, but I do know a lot of other people, especially in my community, that this would truly help. And so I'm very, very grateful. I'm sure others will be as well.
Thank you.
Leader Lamberth.
And I'd love to have your support on this bill and to have you co-sponsor and sign on to it, or anyone else would be interested. And I use Nikki's situation and her tragedy and her life as an example, but you're absolutely right. There are unfortunately thousands of victims that this can help throughout our state. It is not just Ms. Goeser, but it is definitely thousands of other people. I wanted to recognize her. She's watching today and wanted to make sure y'all know that that's what brought this to my attention, just as your constituents did with you.
Any other questions? Vice Chair Eldridge, you're recognized.
Just I guess a curiosity. Let's say you have somebody in there, even though they piled on these misdemeanors and extra time, and this person is just determined that they're going to mail a letter out, they're going to send something out. Would it be that the Department of Corrections would monitor their mail?
Leader Lamberth.
It's a really good question, a very difficult answer. There are lots of ways that a prisoner can get a piece of mail out. There are pieces of mail they can send to their attorney, to other attorneys. I mean, they have rights that they have earned through different federal lawsuits and decisions. It is a very intricate process. I know the Department of Correction tries to make sure to do that if there is a threat or if there is contact that's prohibited. I think that this gives them just an additional tool to be able to do that, because if a court has said, this prisoner may not have contact with this person, it does give them, I think, more authority and a better ability to be able to do just that. But just because of the way a prison is set up, it doesn't make it impossible for, I mean, no matter how well they check, there's lots of ways for, one prisoner to give a piece of mail to another prisoner and then mail it out for them. I mean, it happens. So again, that's the reason why it's, I think, important to put this in the law. But yeah, I know they try to do that, but it's a very intricate process.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of moving out House Bill 434 as amended, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. You move out to civil.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you all so very much.